A very, very good evening. A warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine as we kick off a fairly seminal week in the history of the show. As mentioned a couple of times last week, on Wednesday, the 1st of March, we'll be making a rather special announcement pertaining to a partnership with Dan Really Likes Wine. You'll be able to watch it live from 12 o'clock as we broadcast from Norman Goodfellows in Four Ways, which might just give you a hint of what is to come. It's a really special and exciting chapter in the history of a show that kicked off in November 2016 with me being bullied by Michael Jordan into starting something about wine online, and has now turned into South Africa's biggest online wine show, and one we have a great deal of fun with. That fun will continue on Wednesday going forward with this new partnership, but that certainly doesn't mean there is not fun to be had today, because I'm going to be joined by a trio of people who are part of one of the most exciting wine projects, certainly in South Africa, but they also spread beyond the world. They are the Otto family vineyards, and they've got 3 in South Africa, 4 more in Europe, and collectively they're just making some really cool and exciting wine and telling some wonderful stories, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. In particular, tell the story of the headline act of the South African property, which is Taaibosch, where I find myself today and where I've been for the last 5 days, and where a little later on today I shall be pushing furniture up against the door at the Farside Villa in an attempt to not be evicted and sent home to the rain, potholes and power cuts of Johannesburg. So coming up in just a moment, 3 of the team at Taaibosch, and by extension Le Chant and Pink Valley, and I'm really excited to not just have a look at what they're doing now, but also to go back in time, because we're going to do a little wine comparison which speaks to the history of the Taaibosch property and how that feeds in to the wine that is being made today. So all that is to come. Before we do that, though, it's been a busy few days in the wine world, so let's get an update. All right, so we'll kick off just a reminder of what I've already mentioned about Wednesday, but also an invitation. It is a special announcement. If you would like to join us, we're going to be working with the team at Telegraph up at Norman Goodfellows on Wednesday from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. You can come along, do some tasting, sample some of the new Telegraph wine, and between 12 and 1, watch the live show play out with a range of guests, a number of wine personalities I will have joining me as we celebrate this brand new adventure. So if you happen to be in the Four Ways area, you've got 2 options. Spend 9 hours being stuck in traffic, getting nowhere, or swing by to the Four Ways store and come and join us for some wine tasting and come and meet some cool people in the wine world and help us celebrate a really important step forward. Now, if you are looking for something to do this weekend, we mentioned it last week, we will mention again today in the hope that there might be some tickets left. I'm not sure there are, but just in case, it is Constantia Fresh, which this year heads a little further south. It's not in Constantia per se, but Constantia is packing its bags and heading down to Cape Point Vineyards, which is a superb place to spend a day, and even more so with the very best of Constantia, and not just the wines, but the winemakers will all be there, and there'll also be music playing. There'll be food for a number of local eateries, and a real essence of Constantia playing out over a long, lovely day. I've done Constantia Fresh a number of times over the years. Hugo Jacobs and his team create something really special, and you are in for a treat. And then a quick update on some of my wine adventures. I'll talk a little more about Taaibosch later on in the show, given that I'm still here and trying not to leave anytime soon. But some of the stuff I've been able to do over the last few days, we've had some really good experiences. Got to spend some time with Erica Obermeyer in her cellar, her newish home in Stellenbosch. She's making lovely wine, and the transition from working in the cellar as part of a broader team at Graham Beck to creating her own label and making some wine that picked up where the Graham Beck still wines left off when they opted to just go for bubbles has been a marvel to watch, and even more so to drink. She is such a gifted winemaker. Some of the wines we were drinking, including a look at her new Cape Winemakers Guild wine, now that she is a member thereof, are ones to keep a close eye out for as and when they release. They will not last very long. So time with Erica, really good. Also got to spend some time with Louis and the team at Ernie Els Wineries, drinking some of the 2013 signature, the 10-year-old blend that speaks directly to Ernie Els's palate. He sat down with Louis Stratum. They tried loads of wines. Believe me, if it was Ernie, they tried loads of wines. And they came up with one time and again that really spoke to Ernie's palate, a big Bordeaux blend that has been replicated by and large every year since, and at 10 years old, drinking delightfully, especially in the surrounds of Ernie Els. Also spent some time with Ian Nodir and Yanis from Vasaltis in Santorini. Remember, we had Vasaltis on the show when I was in Greece last year. And again, that Assyrtiko, just a benchmark wine in its class. Also had the chance to drop in at Chorus, the brand new Bertus restaurant. I think he's now got 82 restaurants somewhere in the greater Stellenbosch area. And yet, despite there being so many, he does not lose his touch. A 6-course tasting menu. It felt like we were in Roman times, flattened by the end of it, but by exceptional food and a really interesting wine list. Touches of Vada Clove, the estate it's on, but also some other interesting stuff. The village Riesling from Paul Kluwer, for instance, and the Spiernkop just up the road, the Sauvignon Blanc from Elgin. Really, really nice wines. And then finally, the chance to nip just down the road to Cavalli, which is recovered just about from the loss of Mark Lester and produced a wonderful chef's menu. 5 courses, this time paired just with Cavalli wines, but some really interesting ones. Craig Barnard has left. New winemaker Merle is in play, and I think doing a really exciting job already. So plenty of indulgence in Stellenbosch and surrounds over the last few days, which now leads me to some more indulgence, because there is some fairly cool wine, one bottle in particular with a lot of history to highlight today's show, as do a trio of gentlemen called Schalk, Petri, and most importantly Pascal, who has flown out from France just to be on the show. He was so excited to join us. Pascal, a very warm welcome, and thank you for joining us on the show. Schalk and Petri, lovely to have you both. Welcome once again to Dan Really Likes Wine, and thank you for inviting me into your home.
It's nice to have you here, Dan.
It's lovely to have all three of you, and we've got a lot to celebrate in terms of where we are, and particularly some wine that speaks to the history of this property. But it would be wrong not to kick off with the big boss, who's flown in just to be here on the show today. Pascal, lovely to have you here. And tell me a little bit about the story from your perspective, Pascal, as how a guy in France, where historically you've made a little bit of reasonable wine over the years, decides, hang on, I want to go and explore South Africa and start a new business in another part of the world.
Yes, I mean, I'm very, very honored to be on your show, and I was very pleased to take a plane to arrive here to be able to be on your show. No, we are very, very happy to be in South Africa, and with our 2 friends, we are making a fantastic job. So, as you know, we have few other vineyards in Europe, and when we began our stories, what you want, when we began our investments and storing wine, we want to go on the other side of the world, and we travel all around the world in Australia, in New Zealand, in Argentina, and of course, the best place is South Africa. And we have the opportunity to meet Schalk, and then to find Taaibosch and Crescendo. So it's not a very old story, but it's a beautiful story, and we are very happy with the results of our wine. I think we will increase the quality of the wine, and but actually, I'm sure. And I think Schalk also is sure we have one of the best South African wine. So I hope you share that with us. But and if we compare, we can do that. If we compare with, you give us a fantastic bottle of 2002, and we have the bottle of 2019 over there. And if we compare, you can see that this time the taste, the quality, and the flavor will increase if you compare the 2019 and 2002. We can see in the 2002 I mean, this ground is very rich, and we can. I mean, there is a lot of new flavor if you compare the two, and quality is really fantastic after nearly 20 years. I think you share that. Yep.
We'll go into that tasting in a little more detail in a moment. I'm really excited to see how the two wines compare over the years and speak to the same terroir. And before we do that, though, Pascal, just on that issue of deciding to come to South Africa, there are plenty of reasons that seem quite straightforward. The economics of South Africa coming from Europe is attractive. You've got extremely good-looking winemakers in South Africa. But what was the magic moment? What was it when you came to South Africa? The light bulb went off and you thought, yes, this is really where I want to be.
I think, first of all, South Africa is it's a fantastic country. If you travel, you know your country much better than me. If you travel around, it's beautiful. And you have something which is fantastic in South Africa. It's not it's a country of solutions, you know. It's not a country of problems. I'm afraid to say in France, we are very lucky. Everything is for free, nearly, and people are always unhappy. Here, life is, a bit more difficult, and people seems to be happy and to be able to find solutions when there is problems. And in our activity, wine business, to have a population like that is very helpful because there is always problem everywhere, and to be able to find solutions is something which is very, very, very important. So, but also the ambience in South Africa, where we are in south of South Africa is really fantastic, and nice people, nice ambience, nice clients. I think so also, so which we helpful, and beautiful wine. If you compare with Argentina, they are making very good wine, but everything is complicated. There is corruption everywhere. You are not sure what you are buying, you know, and it's not the same here. If you are going in New Zealand, they are making wine, huge quantity, but it's quite difficult to find quality wine, you know. I don't like this type of white wine they are making, you know. And when you drink this wine, you think you burn your stomachs, which is not the case in South Africa. You make beautiful wine. And there is a story from France and South Africa. The first French people arrived in this country more than 300 years ago. So, we have a common story, and even Schalk has a French name, you know. So that's also a reason why we are very happy to be here. Even if I'm not a Huguenot, but nobody's perfect.
Well, what about from your perspective, Schalk? When this story arrived on the horizon, here's a French group with some great street cred who now want to create something brand new in South Africa. How exciting, how nerve-wracking and intimidating was getting this project off the ground?
I think you nailed it there. Of course, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's nerve-wracking as well. And to me, the nicest thing about it is the Pascal and Daughter family. It's not an investment. This is a partnership. It's a partnership not only with me and with other people, but it's a partnership with our country. It's a partnership with our staff. There's a long-term vision in terms of what you want to do. And, I always, for me, long-term is 10, 15 years. But the way that the Daughter family is looking at it is, it's the next generation, which make us emphasize different things. So our base of what we do, where we start, how we interact with our clients, what we plant, how we do it, our yields, everything is measured by making sure that our foundation is sound, it's secure, because we will not necessarily reap the benefits of this incredible terroir that we have right now, but long term, I believe that this is one of the best sites this country has to offer to make wine in this particular style.
Which leads us to the terroir, because we have some terroir to explore through two different interpretations, almost 2 decades apart. For people who aren't too aware of the past, Schalk, give us a snapshot of what Crescendo was, what Cordoba was, that now lives on in its new form here at Taaibosch.
In the words of Michael Fijon, I mean, Cordoba was this country's first DQ wine, first Cabernet Franc blend, and with the talented winemakers, Chris Kiet, who's now making his first verse on the scenes. When it arrived in the mid-90s, it really exploded in the South African wine scene, not only in South Africa, but internationally as well. And this site, the proximity to the ocean, the aspect, altitude, the fact that we have a 25% clay content in the soil with a little bit of shale, which is not too common in the Helleberg area. It's just giving birth to these incredible wines with elegance, with finesse, with tension right through. So it was easy for us to take what Chris has started basically just to the next, in the next phase, as one can say.
Well, let's meet the wines that speak to the two different phases and say hello to Petri. We haven't had a chance to chat to you so far. Petri is the young rising star of the Otto Empire around the world. I know you've spent time in a number of the other vineyards. Grab a glass of the 2002 for me, if you will, to start with, and just give me a sense of what you're getting there and what this wine is saying to you.
Well, this 2002 Crescendo, I mean, it's also a Cab Franc late blend, the same as the style of the 2019, but it's incredible to see. I mean, I've had the opportunity to taste a 95 Crescendo, a 99 Crescendo, and this 2002 is definitely hitting way above its pay grade. For one that's nearly 20 years old, I mean, if I can show you the bottle here. So it's almost 20 years old. Just more than 20 years old, and the wine is still fresh. You can get the aging of the specific wine. You can definitely pick up the aged Cab Franc notes, but I think the nice thing about this wine is the fact that it's clean, it's pure, and it still has an amazing balance with a beautiful acidity. And I mean, if you look at the site and what we have here, it just shows you that even though times change, the style of the wine is still true to what the site has to offer.
Pascal, how much does it excite you when you drink this wine and get a sense of, well, this is where the Taaibosch is going to go in the next 10, 15, 20 years?
I mean, I think I'm very happy to drink and to taste the 2002. And you can see I mean, the quality of this area in this wine. To be perfectly honest, I think the Taaibosch in 20 years will be better than this one. If I can say something. It is very interesting.
That got a big smile from Schalk. Schalk, I won't ask you the same question because I know you're a modest man. But I will ask you about linking one to the other. When you're drinking a wine like this, you know it's from the terroir that you're now working day in, day out. How much does it influence you, guide you in terms of understanding what is possible, what the potential is, and what the ideal style of wine might be?
It's quite a loaded question, Dan, but let's just start with the 2002. You know, 2002 as a vintage was really cold, wet. It's not the easiest vintage. And to me, to be sitting here, I'm quite privileged that 20 years later down the line, and you see the lineage, you see the DNA, irrespective who is making the wine, that if you respect the terroir, that you would end up with the wine very, very similar, irrespective who was in charge in the making of it. However, I mean, winemaking is important. Dane P. Bailey used to say that he's never see a horse winning the Durban July without a jockey. So you need a jockey just to guide it. But for me, it excites me to think that this is a style of wine with less winemaking, but more wine growing and trying to understand that, well, what we should avoid in the vineyard, resulting in a wine like this. I'm really, really excited about it.
Petri, what about for you as a relatively young winemaker? You've already got to do a fair amount and you've made some great vintages yourself, but as a history lesson that then shapes your understanding of the wine you're making this year and next year and years going forward, how much do you learn out of drinking this particular wine, knowing that it is from exactly where the Taaibosch is now coming to life?
Well, I think it's always great to taste older vintages and to compare it with what you're working at this time, present time. And I think an older vintage really guides you in towards what you should do and what you should keep on doing stylistically in this process. Not everyone gets the opportunity to taste the 2002 Cordoba Crescendo on a Monday morning. I think this is a huge privilege. And we're very fortunate to be able to sit here and to actually taste this wine. And for me, what one takes out of an older vintage like this, I mean, if you look at, unfortunately, I was in 2002, I was still very, very young and not even close to drinking wine. So I can't really tell you anything about the vintage. But if you take the challenges that you get into the newer vintages and the vintages that you're actually more part of, and the vintages that I've been working with, it's incredible to look at your 18s and your 19s and your 20s and your 21s and your 22s, and now we're heading into a 23 vintage, and out of each vintage, there's something that you can take home and something that you can learn about the specific vintage and the abiotic factors that played a massive role. And I really think this 2002, I mean, it's a great wine. It's a wine that's aged beautifully, and it's a wine that's definitely going to age for another 10 years. And from a young winemaker, I think that this is the style of wine that we saw, or that I want to produce while at Taaibosch. I think to produce a wine with longevity and a wine that can last is definitely any winemaker's. That's what a winemaker wants to do at the end of the day.
So I think that's a pretty comprehensive look at that 2002. Pascal, you've already suggested that you're expecting great things from the vintages of Taaibosch, and in particular the one that we're drinking today. Give me your perspective on the wine, though, in terms of what your anticipation might have been when you first arrived, when the project started, what you were thinking, and where that wine actually is today. Has that perhaps surpassed your expectations?
You know, when we bought this property, we were nearly sure that we will have a great wine with the help of Schalk. Schalk knows this area before, and because he was buying grapes here, and he knows that this area has a specific qualities of ground, of terroir, and close to the sea, always some wind. And so, of course, when you make such an acquisition, you are always quite anxious. But I think we have some warranties that we will go on the right way. And then we were able to buy a few other vineyards around, and still, we have done Le Champ, which is very close to here, which is also beautiful. And this area of the world can produce really fantastic wine. So for me, it was always a risky investment, because we have to rebuild everything, to replant everything, to build a nice cellar, all those things. But anyway, I was sure we would be able to make a success. And it's where we are. We are on this way, actually.
Which leads to a question, Schalk, on the element of pressure. There are a number of other properties within the group, including a couple in France itself. I think we are past the stage where we are trying to compare ourselves with other countries. We're making wine on our own terms, and that is really important. But when you sit within a group that's got vineyards in Spain and in France and in Italy, there'll always be a little bit of quiet. I wonder how this is drinking compared to the others. What's it been like making wine within a group that also has French wine, and knowing that there are European benchmarks that sit there as you're producing your new wine?
Yes, unfortunately, in our group, which is what the Ode family did, which is quite clever, is that in our portfolio, in our wines, they're not really wines that are in direct competition with each other. So our partnership with Planeta Serra Fernandia is predominantly a Nero d'Avlo blend for the red wine. And then we have in Sancerre, we have a vineyard, and then obviously in the south of France, we have vineyards. But it is the different brands complement each other rather than compete with each other, which is nice. So it's not as if one is trying to make the best wine in the group. But of course, each property has its own identity. Even in South Africa, where we have the 3 different properties, instead of having one property with different tiers, different layers of quality, it was decided by Pascal and the family that each property should have its own identity, its own brand, and should be able to function completely on its own, which is challenging in a way, but also it allows us to really, really focus on each brand individually.
Speaking of those other properties, I want to come back in a moment to wrap up on Taaibosch, but one that's come up, Pascal, in conversation in my wine circles quite often over the last few weeks has been Pink Valley and the resurgence and revolution of rosé in South Africa. I think there were a few people when news first came out, an entire estate just for rosé. A lot of people rolled their eyes and thought, who is this mad guy from France who thinks this could possibly be a good idea? Now we're sitting with a number of South African rosés that are in that really top-end, premium, elegant, savory, nodding in the direction of the south of France style that are doing particularly well, which begs the question, Pascal, how on earth did you get this right? How did you know that this was going to be the next big thing in South Africa?
I think rosé, it's a wine of pleasure, and rosé means holidays, means beach, means nice women, and everything like that, And it's rosé. It's a bit like champagne. It's not the same price, but it describes the same type of ambience, pleasure. And I don't know if you see what is happening in rosé in France, because there is huge move, and the LVMH group, Bernard Arnault, tried to invest a lot of money in this area, and I think there is a huge market of rosé. Provence is not a huge area, so I think actually already LVMH group owns about 35% of the rosé of Provence. And then there is room for rosé coming from South Africa. First of all, in South Africa, because people, I think, are very happy to drink rosé, and this market. But now you have rosé in Australia, you have rosé in Chile, you have rosé everywhere in the world, and I think the quality of the rosé we are making here is not the same, because we don't want to compare. It's not the same that the rosé we are making in France, but it's I would say a Provence type of rosé. It is close to what we are doing. We are making rosé in Italy, in Sicily also, which is a big difference. Perhaps you can try the spring rosé. You can see the difference, but it's really a wine of pleasure. It's not something we don't want to compare with crescendo, which is not the same type of pleasure, I would say. Rosé is really sun and holidays. But we are very happy, and I think we were nearly the first people making rosé when we arrived here, and we were sure there was a market, and we find a market for this product, and we make a very good rosé. So we are very happy.
Petri, this is mostly your baby, which you worked on very closely. How surprised were you when this project came up as a rosé-only project? And also as a winemaker, how much did it shift your philosophy, given that for so many years rosé was almost, well, we've got some of these grapes left over and we've got some of those, so we'll make a rosé with that. It was an afterthought in many cellars, whereas now it's not only top of the pile, it's all of the pile.
Well, I mean, the rosé is super exciting to produce. One thing that we really do differently is we farm specifically for rosé production. So it's not like we have a block or we use bleeding juice. Or we have our Grenache and our Sangiovese, and that's our blocks that we use specifically for the rosé. And I mean, I was fortunate enough to go over to Provence for a 2.5-month harvest, and by stealing with my eyes, not necessarily my ears, as my French is not perfect yet, I definitely think that going to the heart of Provence to actually learn the craft helps at the end of the day to come and perfect the rosé production in South Africa. And I really think the rosé market has been improving a lot over the past few years. It's not just semi-sweet and pink anymore. It's actually a wine that you can sit and enjoy. It's refreshing, it's crispy, and I really like the production of rosé. I mean, it's a different style, so it's nice to be able to do both facets of winemaking. You have your proper red wine production, and then you also have your rosé production, which is just as challenging as producing a proper rosé.
It is a brand new chapter in rosé in South Africa, and a very valuable one, a great addition to South African wine. Just quickly, Petri, you're also very hands-on with Le Chant. Give us a quick update. Other than that fabulous little wine bar you've now got in Stellenbosch, where Mark Lester, the barman, does a terrific job. Give me a quick update on Le Chant and where it's headed.
So Le Chant is moving exceptionally well at the moment. I mean, we hit the market with our 2019 vintage, which is our current release at the moment. And it's a beautiful style blend, everything from the polka dry. So as Schalk mentioned earlier, each farm has its own identity. Taaibosch has its identity on the Helderberg. Le Chant has its identity on the polka dry. And it's a Merlot-based blend with Cab Franc, Cab, Shiraz, and Sangiovese. Our 2020 vintage is already in bottle. Our 21 vintage is blended, and it's in ferment mostly or predominantly, and then the rest in Foudre. And our 22 vintage is actually blended too. So all of the wines are blended and ready, and it's super nice to actually sit down and to taste the evolution of the Le Chant. I mean, our 19 was our first start, and from 2020 onwards, we've just been improving year in, year out. We also have the wine bar in town. The wine bar is an extremely nice vibe. I mean, it's in Church Street, nice food. We're chopping down to the menu a bit now. It's becoming more street food. So I think Le Chant and a gyro is exactly what you need every single night of the week. So whenever you're close, pop in and enjoy it.
I have been in myself with, actually we're there with Joubert and Neil de Kock, the two former Springboks who normally drink sparkling water and spend their days doing sit-ups. They indulged very happily, so as did we. And that Le Chant drank, I opened one bottle on Thursday night. Before we knew it, we'd opened three, and all three of them were a delight. Just before we wrap up with you, Pascal, if we look, Schalk, at Taaibosch, we've got this history lesson today of where it's been in the days of Cordoba, where it is today. What about tomorrow and beyond? What's your vision with Taaibosch? Where do you see the wine, the brand going?
For me, it's actually incredible. We've been extremely blessed. Within 2 years being on the market, Taaibosch is almost recognized as one of the top wines in the country for this particular category. I think for us, it's establishing the brand, and it's a whole story of moving beyond a fast-moving consumer product into a brand. It's about consistency. It's about believing in what you do, realizing that you cannot be everything for everybody. This is our style, this is our site, this is our partnership, and just continue with that. And I think that's about it.
Just to add something and to confirm what Schalk was saying, we invest in South Africa in my family office. And my daughter is in charge of the wine activity. Why I'm saying that is because we have time. We are trying to continue to improve our wine, to improve the quality, and I'm afraid I will not be there in 20 years to compare the 19 and to something else. But I'm sure we will be there in 20 years. And so it will be my daughter, perhaps my grandchildren with Schalk. But what I want to say is we are here for a long time and we want to continue to improve the quality of our wine. And I'm sure we will continue to be one of the best.
Well, which I think almost answers the question I wanted to put to you, Pascal, but I'll ask it nonetheless. The sense of positivity that comes out of all three of you, but especially you, Pascal, as somebody with an outside view coming in from Europe, despite our challenges in South Africa, and yes, we have many of them, are you still feeling upbeat about this space and upbeat about your investment, about Otto Vineyards being here in South Africa?
Your question is to say if I'm still very happy to be here? Of course, I'm very happy. I have a better understanding of your country, better understanding of the people who are living here, of your fantastic history, and really, I don't regret. If it is your questions, I don't regret to be in South Africa. And when I have a look of different trips we have done with Lauren around the world, I really don't regret at all.
It's really good to hear. It's a kind of perspective I think we need to try and sift through all of the challenges and get a little bit of balance. Last one for you, Pascal. I spent a great afternoon with Schalk and with Monche, having a look through the launch of the Harvest Table, which is not just a cookbook, it's a great tribute to the regional cuisine and to the history of the different properties that sit under the group, three of which very happily are here in South Africa. Is the South Africa story done for now, or do you think there might still be another chapter or two to include?
I mean, no, it's not. Yeah, it's always finished. It's never finished, you know. It's never finished. You know, my two friends know they know me since a long time now, since a few years, and you know, I'm not very young, I'm afraid. And life is like a bicycle. If you stop the bicycle, you fall down. For me, I need to have new project always. So of course we will have something else in South Africa. Perhaps I have an idea, because you are able to make fantastic red wine in some other area more southeast, I would say. And perhaps there will be opportunity. If there is opportunity over there, we will have a look. But first of all, we need to finish what we have done with Taaibosch, with Le Champ, with Le Rosé. I think in the next 2 years we will see what we will do.
I think that's long overdue. Long overdue, Pascal, because you've got two winemakers and they're only making 4 wines between them. Schalk's on the golf course 4 times a week. I think you need to give them some work to do. It is long overdue.
You know, Dan, those people are a bit lazy. You know that.
Dear. Guys, it's been an absolute delight getting to chat to the three of you. Pascal, thank you for flying in from France to be with us and to tell a little bit about your story. And Petri, Schalk, to be able to drink the O2 Crescendo with you and its modern version has been a real delight as well. I know it won't be too long before we have you all back on the show again, and possibly on some of the other vineyards in Europe. But until then, safe travels home to France, Pascal and Schalk.
We are waiting for you. We are waiting for you.
I shall be there with pleasure. Pascal Otto, who is the man behind the Otto. Well, I think Lorraine is behind the Otto family vineyards, and Pascal helps her out. Schalk and Petri, winemakers collectively. Guys, thank you very, very much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
So there we go. That wraps us up for Dan Really Likes Wine for today. Remember, if you're in the Fourways area, do come and join us on Wednesday from 11 until 3 for a few glasses of wine and a chance to watch a special edition of the show. And then Thursday, back at its normal time, 5 p.m, our live show. We go back to the very first show we ever did on Dan Really Likes Wine. Mike Radcliffe joins me as we sample some Villafonte Series C, Louis Straden with the Ernie L signature, Marc Leroux and the Gem from Waterford, and we head round the corner to Franschhoek where Bear Robertson is with us with the Antoine Rupert blend, a wine that Schalk knows rather well. It's a busy week for Dan Really Likes Wine. It's a busy year ahead for all of us. All I can suggest if you need a break is a visit down to Taaibosch on the Farside Villa. Doesn't get much better. Thanks very much, guys. See you next week. Bye.